On expenditure, as we continue with the budget speech by the Treasurer, Patrick Proach, nothing that wasn't expected. The government maintains its key pillar policies of health, education, infrastructure, and law and order. But 25% of the total budget goes to the provinces, and the allocations go all the way down to the ward levels. 51 million kina this time. Not bad at an election time. It is, nevertheless, consistent with what has been this government's recognition of districts and all the way down to the community levels. Again, Mr. Proach.
Mr. Speaker, on the 2017 budget expenditure, it remains at 12,965.4 million kina compared with the 13,834 million in the recently passed 2016 supplementary budget after 928 million was cut from the original budget to prevent a budget blowout. The 1.1 billion kina reduction in expenditure in 2017 is necessary to maintain overall debt at a sustainable path through a budget deficit of 2.5% or 1,875 million kina. Overall, debt to GDP will remain at 28.8%, similar to 2016, with the risk that a further revenue shortfall could take it over the legislated 30% limit. Mr. Speaker, the 2017 budget will maintain the government's expenditure strategies as reflected in previous budgets. Close attention will be paid to all government priority areas, including health, education, infrastructure, and provincial and district level expenditures. Mr. Speaker, the fiscal framework is based on a gradual fiscal consolidation path with the aim of achieving a balanced budget just beyond 2021, while keeping debt at a sustainable level to maintain macroeconomic stability. Mr. Speaker, let me elaborate by sector. The provinces received 3,605.7 million kina, or 27.8% of the total budget, which is the largest share of the total budget. Major appropriations include PSIP of 220 million, DSIP of 890 million, LLGSIP of 32.2 million, and ward is 61.8 million kina. The administration sector received 2,732.3 million kina, or 21.1% of the total budget, which is the second largest share of the budget. Major projects include the hosting of the APEC Summit of 250 million, the 2017 National General Election of 400 million, public debt interest expenditure of 1,316.9 million kina, superannuation of 272 million kina, public service retrenchment of 20 million kina, and office accommodation of 78 million kina. On the health sector, Mr. Speaker, it receives the third largest share of the total budget of 1,221.2 million kina, or 9.4% of the total budget. Key expenditures include free health care of 20 million kina and medical supplies procurement of 160 million kina. The education sector receives the fourth largest share of 1,162.5 million kina, or 9% of the budget. This includes tuition fee-free policy of 602 million kina. The law and order sector receives the fifth largest share of 1,124.01 million kina, or 8.7% of the budget. This includes the Waigani Courthouse Complex redevelopment of 80 million kina, police housing project of 2 million kina, police modernization of 15 million kina, and defense infrastructure of 5 million kina. Mr. Speaker, the transport sector receives the sixth largest share of 897.15 million kina, or 6.9% of the total budget. This is a 12.5% reduction from the 2016 supplementary budget. The economic sector is allocated 398 million kina. Community and culture sector received 204.6 million kina, and utility sector received 223.2 million kina. Mr. Speaker, these appropriations reflect the government's commitment for policy priorities and broad-based economic growth. The 2017 budget does that by making positive long-term choices that will further strengthen our economy and our communities into the future. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to the financing of the 2017 budget. The government intends to move the country's debt to GDP ratio onto a sustainable path while supporting development. The deficit of 1,875 million kina equates to 2.5% of GDP. The government debt profile will be managed strictly using a range of financing instruments, including the potential issuance of a sovereign bond to ease pressure on the domestic debt market. Mr. Speaker, in addition, the government will continue to work with relevant stakeholders to progress the key recommendations from a review of Papua New Guinea's government bond and capital markets by development partners. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to inform this House that an independent firm has been engaged to carry out a comprehensive executive search in the domestic and international labor market to identify and recommend suitable candidates for appointment as chairman and members of the Papua New Guinea Sovereign World Fund Board. I expect that the government will announce the establishment of the SWA board to manage the fund in early 2017. The Sovereign World Fund Board's primary focus in the short term will be to develop the framework and arrangements for funds investment and the establishment of the Administrative Secretariat to support its operational and administrative functions. The Administrative Secretariat is expected to be established and operational in 2017 in view of its roles and responsibility. Mr. Speaker, as you know, this is a reform government. Some of the major public sector reforms initiatives, legislative and administrative reforms are review of the public sector to determine its effectiveness and cost effectiveness in terms of service delivery, merging national departments and agencies, managing of manpower and personnel emolument ceilings, and superannuation reforms. These reform initiatives are aimed at reducing inefficiencies, rebase public servicing, and strategically realign public sector agencies' functions and responsibilities to avoid duplication of roles and responsibilities.
That's been Patrick Pruach, the Treasurer, handing down the 2017 budget in Parliament this afternoon. This is PNG Tonight. I'm John Higgins. Thank you for your company. Good night.